Black Lives Matter movement, all that recent anti-police rhetoric, all that extreme race politics, all this has had a poisonous effect. In the US, who would be a policeman today? Who would dare still hope that the rule of law, a sense of community under one law, will triumph over the new tribalism of the left? Now, if I sound too pessimistic, let me show you video just shot from the body cam of a Los Angeles police officer of Mexican background, by the way, it'll become relevant at the end, who pulled up a black woman, apparently a teacher, who just gave a minute and a half of hate, including race hate, and I tell you, it didn't come from the policeman. And as you watch, make a resolution. This kind of race politics must not be allowed to take root here.
You know why I'm being harassed today? Because I was going under the speed limit. I was going at 38.
Yes, you are, ma'am. Good morning.
And the speed limit is 40, and I was going 38, so why are you harassing me?
You're correct. I pulled you over because
you're a murderer. Yes, I started to record because you're a murderer.
You can't be on your cell phone while you're driving.
I wasn't on my phone. I was recording you because you scared me.
You can't use your cell phone while you're recording.
I can record you.
May I have your driver's license?
It's at my apartment.
What's your apartment?
It's at my home. I'm just taking my son to his
Do you have your driver's license?
I mistakenly left it at home.
Do you have a picture of your driver's license?
Yes, I do.
May I have it?
And can you call your supervisor, please?
I already did. He's on his way.
Good, because you're a murderer.
Okay.
And so you're giving me a cell phone ticket? Is that why you're harassing me?
Not harassment. Yeah. I am enforcing the law.
I have a right to record the police when they're harassing me.
By all means, but you can't do it while you're driving.
I wasn't texting or none of that.
Do you have that
you
picture?
You scared me and made me think you were going to murder me.
Okay, well, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Well, that's not just a feeling. You're a murderer.
Okay. Can you zoom in on that for me,
Sure.
dear? Thank you.
And I'm perfectly legal, and I'm a teacher. So there.
Congratulations.
Murderer. You're a murderer.
Yeah.
Here you go, Mexican racist. You're always going to be a Mexican. You'll never be white. You know that, right?
Join me for her regular Tuesday report from the US is Annelise Nielsen, Sky News US correspondent. Annelise, America seems so divided.
It's absolutely divided, but this isn't something that's unusual in American history. It's been divided before, but this issue of just policing and the allegations of brutality against police is what's really defined the last year. What we've seen in that video is something where it looks like it's quite confrontational and it doesn't look like the police officer's done anything wrong, but this is a long-running discussion and there has been a lot of evidence against police in other ways. And so you can see why it's become such a febrile issue. I've found it really interesting having been here over the summer of the last year. I've attended a lot of protests of both Trump supporters and BLM Antifa. It was something I noticed at a lot of the BLM protests, that it would be the black protesters singling out the black police officers and you'd see them screaming in their faces, calling them traitors. And I always found that really quite surprising, because I would have thought you'd want more people of colour, you'd want more minorities within policing to kind of have that more equality to it. And that's something I've brought up a few times when we've been in Minneapolis speaking to the local community around George Floyd Square about what they want to see in policing. And most people do want to see a strong police force. They want to know that when they call someone for help, that someone's going to come. It's not an unreasonable thing, but this has become such a pervasive issue in the United States, this kind of idea that it's us versus them. Even last time, some of the most reasonable people I spoke to were saying, hey, you're not black anymore. When you become a police officer, you're blue. And so there is that just absolute antagonism. And the thing that's changed this more than we've ever seen in history before is the fact everyone's got a camera now. And the only thing that's really going to keep holding everyone accountable like this is where there's body camera vision. So the police officer can say, hey, I didn't do anything wrong. She profiled me the moment I walked up to the car. She's got her own video too. So this is probably going to be the thing that kind of changes this entire dialogue.
Yes, I would have liked her face not obscured, but shown to the world of the kind of things that she's doing. But anyway, to Washington politics, Annelise. President Joe Biden under pressure, yet again, from his party's left wing, this time to loosen patent protection, to loosen intellectual protection on those virus vaccines, to force pharmaceuticals to give up their secrets and let other companies then make what they've discovered. Why is this?
Well, this is a push coming from the left of the Democrats. They want to see all this technology shared around the world so countries can start their own local production to try and counter this COVID-19 pandemic from the developing countries, which, as we've seen in India, has become the real battleground in this pandemic. But President Biden's been hesitant to weigh in. It's a big pressure to put on pharmaceutical companies, which are very powerful in the United States. But in a broader picture, this has become an international fight for vaccine diplomacy. Australia is engaging in this as well through the Quad Alliance. We've agreed to help distribute vaccines made in partnership with India and Japan around the Indo-Pacific. And it's because China's become the really big player in this. They're producing billions of vaccinations. Of course, Russia's in this as well, but the Sputnik rollout hasn't been quite as effective. But the advantage that China has here is that they have a hand in every single pharmaceutical company, which are geared up to do this. The argument coming from pretty powerful players in the US, including Bill Gates, has been that they shouldn't be compromising the intellectual property of pharmaceutical giants, that this could set a really dangerous precedent, especially to force their hand, and that it's not going to be effective. It's not something that's simple to do. You can hand any average Joe this recipe, but if they don't have the facilities to do it properly, it could also be potentially extremely dangerous if they start distributing vaccines that aren't produced to what we've seen as pretty high standards that you need.
And that's not including the hazard of saying to companies, pharmaceuticals, you may invest billions of dollars in developing these vaccines. We will sue you if they don't work or something goes wrong. And by the way, then we'll rip you off. And all that effort was for nothing because we're going to give it for free to some other fly-by-night company to make as well. So I just think, once again, you know, moral posturing, but not much of an eye on the results. Now, you mentioned Bill Gates there. Honestly, there are divorces, Annelise, speaking as someone much older than you, there are divorces that I've seen, and then there are divorces involving billion-dollar demergers. Bill Gates, Microsoft founder, and his wife Melinda have announced they can't grow together anymore as a couple. That's my way of putting it, and they're divorcing. And this is going to involve an unbelievable amount of money, given that Gates is ranked the 4th richest person in the world.
Hundreds of billions of dollars, and he has stakes in so many major companies. So this is going to be a divorce for the history books. And this came after just Amazon founder Jeff Bezos divorced his wife. That was a record-setting settlement already. But what's going to be interesting in this is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, because that's the thing they've really collaborated on the most. That's completely set a new precedent for how not-for-profits work right around the world, and they've already distributed $5 billion in aid, but there's still a lot more money that they've pledged that hasn't come through yet. So this is what's going to be a really strong impact on this. And it, funnily enough, actually plays into this whole discussion about the COVID-19 vaccine. As I mentioned before, Bill Gates has said that he doesn't want that intellectual property compromise. There's obviously a vested interest for him in that, and that's going to impact him potentially further down the line. But I'll say on the other point too, I wouldn't start feeling too sorry for the pharmaceutical companies. They have plenty of money at their disposal, and they've been absolutely venerated right throughout this pandemic in the US. And so I don't think that we'll have their hand forced anytime soon. I suspect that if they do start to compromise on their patenting around this, it's because they've figured out that there is a long-term benefit in it for them.
Annelise Nielsen, it's always great to catch up with you. Talk to you next week. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.